Hi, my name is Kim McMillan and I want to welcome you once again to Bay Area Art Beat. I'm thrilled to be at Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival, and I just had the pleasure of hearing Joaquin read his incredible poem, and I want you all to hear it. Now, he's one of the students involved with California Poets in the Schools, and his poem is actually going to be published in a wonderful anthology, and we'll get to actually see it probably within the next month or two. And I asked Joaquin if he would mind reading his poem, and he said he would love to do it. So Joaquin, before we start, because there are a lot of young kids out there who think, well, if Joaquin can write a poem, I can write a poem. So tell us, how long did it take you to write this poem?
Probably like a week or something like that.
Not bad. Not bad at all. Well, what is the name of it?
The Moon and Stars.
Lovely title. Now, Joaquin, you're in the 3rd grade, right? That's excellent. Well, give us I would love to hear it then.
Okay. My poem is called The Moon and Stars. My poem is like the moon and stars in my heart. My brother is like a horse galloping on the sand. And as the sand turns black, the flames come together and gallop into the night. My parents shine as bright as the sun. My brother is like the moon and stars. My grandparents are like horses galloping on the sand. And we are like the constellations shining in the night sky.
It's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, you told me this isn't your first poem. How long have you been writing poems?
Probably I started to like writing them in 1st or 2nd grade, I think.
Well, you know what? You have a real talent. Keep it up. So we're going to be back in just a sec, and I want to thank you for all tuning in to Bay Area Art Beat, and we'll be back right in a second. Thank you. Welcome back. We're back at the Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival. As you can hear, there's music in the background, and I'm so delighted that my next guest is Ruha Mohesesi. I heard her read today this poem that was absolutely, not only is it brilliant, in Middle East right now. And what I love about her is that she is using her ability as a poet to really speak to the day's issues. Ruha is an Iranian-born poet and educator. She's a 2022 McDowell Fellow and a recent graduate of the Pacific University MFA program in Oregon. Now, her debut collection is called When Your Sky Runs Into Mine. What an incredible title. She's a winner of the 22nd annual Elixir Poetry Award, and the book will be released by Elixir Press in February 2023. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me, Kim.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I heard your dog clapping through barking at poems, and I said we have to get her on. After a poem was finished, Cara would just start ruff, ruff, ruff. And I'm like, wow.
She always steals the show. So you have me up here because of my dog, not because of my poem.
No. Of course it's your poetry, but I am amazed at your Cara. But
she's taking a little break right now.
Okay. Could you please read that poem, because it was so vital, and then afterwards we'll talk about it, all right?
Sure.
Great.
Thank you, Kim. So this poem is in response to the recent events that are ongoing right now, the recent protests in Iran that I think most everyone should have heard about. The protests are in their 4th week right now, and it's mainly a women-led movement, young women, university students, high school students, and the movement is called Zan Zendegi Azadi, which translates into woman, life, freedom. So it's a new poem, Zan Zendegi Azadi. Zan Zendegi Azadi is the ends of our daughters' hair and imported tubs of dye by our bathroom sinks, promising their violet and blue, their western overtones in the interrupted narrative of our country, where sunbeams still remember the ritual of reaching through a window to catch the careless toss of a handful of hair out of a face. Here hair and highlights grow out in tension and mistrust at the same ordinary pace as elsewhere. Our roots pounded with surahs and solemnity, pinned and pressed to grow, yet lie in place under the imam's benediction, our shelter from the imperialist threat, when really all our daughters need is a little diversion, same as elsewhere. Volume, the cheerfulness of henna, the stripping bleach of an influencer, to be seen on TikTok, Botox, notwithstanding the dark and tweets and the chirping discontent and filtered static. Tonight we feed our men lavash, paneer sabzi. Daughters refuse supper and walk away, turning their backs on the goldfish that swim for the reflections crossing the dusk of courtyards where heavy-hearted the pomegranates crack and wash the autumn light in ablution. On the streets at every corner perches a wide-angled gaze boring into flesh. .68 caliber paint, plastic bullets, ammunition, cudgels are made halal tonight. Heaven ordained to arrive from Sharq, Gharb, the 4 directions made halal tonight. In this twilight, before or after the Maghrib prayer, beatings will be halal tonight. Surveillance cameras roll and note the degree of coverage, the wantonness of our girls whirling in Western ways, flames licking at headscarves, the imported purple neon, the crazed ends of their millennial hair, gawking in lipstick pink. And what's it to you if I choose to whore? Then it's the mobile phones held high by a chain of suns that corral to document the bared midriff on the pavement, the panic. 2 perked dunes of pre-adolescence, braless and rising to proud points, and blood flowing unrestrainable into a pattern before she had a chance to bleed and be kissed once on one cheek, then the other by us mothers, her aunts, great aunts, before Madar Jan had a chance to push her clean-washed bangs out of her eyes, kiss her forehead, and compliment her for coming of age.
Oh my, I bet that was hard to write.
It just came out. You know, I had to, it's hard to watch what's going on and not be able to actually be out there.
Yes.
And,
but your poem, it lets people, it's a reminder that women and we as people have to shed a light on these types of things for real change to happen. That whatever these women are doing cannot be in vain. You know?
Thank you for saying that, Kim. In fact, right now, the internet is still down in the entire country. I mean, can you imagine that?
Not
you know, and that this way they can squash the the protests without the world looking. And so there are people dying on the streets. So I really encourage everyone to share posts and use the hashtag Mahsa Amini.
Could you spell that, please?
M-A-H-S-A, Mahsa, and her last name was A-M-I-N-I. This was the first, the Kurdish girl.
Right.
She was 22 years old or so, and she was on a trip from to Tehran to visit a family member, and she had her hijab on, sort of the way every girl is wearing her hijab. I mean, nothing unusual. And this is why this is so disturbing. It could really be any kid,
yes,
any girl out there. And they arrested her for just a bit of hair sticking out of her hair, and then it's not clear what they did, but they pounded her head against something, and the girl died 3 days later. And right now, at least a couple of hundred young people have died, 20 of them children. So this is very, very disturbing, and we really do need to amplify their voices, yes. Be their voices for them while the internet is down, and they rely on us. You know, they yes. take huge risks to send out little short videos taken, you know, on cell phones of some protests on the street, and they send it to the TV news in the Iranian TV news outside the country. So really, the diaspora right now is their voices. So every little thing, whatever, every single, just a lot of gestures have been cutting. A lot of women, like celebrities, cutting their hair to show solidarity. But every little step, every little gesture counts.
Thank you for that poem. Thank you,
Kim.
And Ruja, I just want to thank you for sitting here and reading a poem that has such significance and such heart.
Thank you, Kim.
And such caring. Thank you so much.
Thank you for caring.
Thank you.
Thanks,
and we'll
Kim.
be right back. Welcome back to Bay Area Art Beat, and I'm with the dynamic, brilliant, and also Sonoma County Poet Laureate, Maya Khosla. Now, what is wonderful about Maya is today, we went to, as part of the Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival, we actually went on a walk on Strawberry Creek at UC Berkeley, and Maya told us, Maya, you were brilliant. When you started to talk about the forest, the animals, nature, the trees, I was entranced. And your knowledge of what we need to understand about dead trees, about fire, was just so incredible. Can you speak to some of that, as well as read your poem on that?
Oh yeah, sure.
Thank
you so much. I think I started learning about fire from several very senior fire ecologists who led me into forests right after fire. And I realized if I didn't put that on camera, nobody would believe me, because all those dead trees become the housing complexes for all kinds of wild animals, probably starting with the bugs and the woodpeckers. They start it, they make the little cavities, and everyone else wants to live in them because it's you know, premium housing for the wild.
You called it low-income housing for animals.
Yes.
Fascinating.
That's right. Yeah, in fact, I then realized that, you know, of course, because of our misunderstanding, we think it's dangerous, we think it's hazardous, it's going to burn again, it's, you know, going to cause a risk for us. But if it's far enough away from our houses, it makes perfect sense to keep the animals housed safely where they need to be. And if they're intact, they become these very rich, biodiverse areas where the beautiful conifers are growing right back. And 8-10 years of the fire, they're taller than I am.
Wow.
So it's been a fascinating journey, and I'm glad that I've been putting it on film.
I am thrilled that you were there today explaining that. Would you read the poem?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
I have a poem to share. It's called Rejuvenation. And there's a note before the poem, Rejuvenation. That burnt tree, it's the legacy, it's the beginning. It's a quote from Dr. Dominic De La Sala, one of the folks who's been working on this fire issue for a long time. Rejuvenation. Once we have looked away, Once we have mourned and banished all smoldering thoughts about the tribe of blackened trees, replacing the known world for now and another season and possibly another, and the last long fingers of smoke have been ushered out by wind, a ticking begins. No one has seen them arriving in such numbers, but the birds are neither lost nor passing through. They are simply linked tight to the newborn sense of ash and rain, to the promise of white fruits, the riches concealed by bark. So were the ways of ancestors who began their journeys as specks in the distance some 50,000 years ago or more, riding the miles of smoky gold along a known line of hunger, the rufous beat of instinct working a migration upstream against the flow of smoke into the source and the multiple riches. One new arrival looks bright with hope. He preens his dusk and opal plumage. Others tap as if knocking on doors. The answers have been provided by the ages, long as genetic fibers coiled in every cell, beak and bone, muscle and shiny eye. The living are awake to the growth and profusion soon to follow. They will grow with the diligence of all known colors unfurling, from the soil's chocolatey darkness, from the trees regreening comes spring, from the blackness.
So beautiful. So beautiful.
Thank you.
Can you also talk about, because this a little bit about the housing? We have our own housing problems as a state in California, but the idea that the woodpeckers, I had no idea, were actually creating the houses for others.
Yeah.
But what I'm curious about, if the woodpeckers are creating these houses, how do they just leave? I mean, they think, oh, I need a better apartment, or what happens?
Exactly. So they're like the carpenters,
Right.
and they create many, and then the female will choose one. She won't necessarily choose, like the first one that the male builds. She'll choose one. And the rest are to spare. So the rest of the forest, the nuthatches, or bluebirds and the chickadees, they all come racing in and take over.
Fascinating.
And start nesting.
Now, there's also food growing in there. Can you speak about that? Because I was like, wow. Not only do they have a house, but they have a grocery store right next door. So I'm just curious, what type of things grow in there?
So as soon as the fire's over and the weak bark, because it's charred and weak, there's insects that fly in, lay their eggs, and those bugs squirm in, the little larvae, they squirm in, and they're long, big larvae and little bark larvae, wood-boring larvae, and they become pretty juicy. And so the woodpeckers, they know exactly where they are, and then they come in and grab them. And even after the logs fall, and even after the, there's some time when the bugs have a chance to get to a nice size, bears come in and scrape off. I've seen bears scrape off the bark.
Oh my God.
Get something like, it's like a dog bone. They look around and they just take off. I don't want anyone to get this because it's full of bugs.
The scariest thing that what you said is, I've seen the bears take it. So you were actually close enough so that you could say, hi, bear. How you doing?
Yeah, and he's like, I'll see you next time because I want to get out of here because he's got this prize. So.
Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much. This has been fascinating, and I'm so glad that Maya Kusla, you are a gem. You're an absolute gem, and I will be right back. Thank you. back, and we are at the Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival, and I am with the wonderful, I consider her a medicine woman and a genius when it comes to poetry. This is Tarita McHale, and I am so happy you're here, first of all, because you bring spirit with you. When you read, it's like spirit comes down. I'm going to stop a minute and I'm going to kind of look at this. Was you're talking about what's important to me, and that's what you do in your poetry. Mm-hmm. You talk about what's important to the planet, what's important to us as human beings. And when I heard you read today, I thought, there she is. Mm. She is talking about that part of us that is with the divine. Mm-hmm. And it was so beautiful. So tell us, is this your first time reading at Watershed?
I don't think so. I know it's been a number of years, and I've had students and their work be presented here. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Well, now tell us a little bit about your teaching.
I'm with California Poets in the Schools that began at San Francisco State in 1964, and it was the first of its kind in the country to send professional poets into the classroom to teach poetry. So I began in 1989-90 teaching poetry, and from that time, or since that time, I've published about 73 anthologies of children's poetry. But
fabulous.
You know, it would just, my friends and those I were very close to would notice how I'd become a bit more intense during that time, processing, editing, and going through the work of children who are writing things that they see or have experienced, and then I would tend to hold it and then have to, you know, but then presenting their work to them, you know,
yes.
When each child gets a copy, and then hearing things like, oh, man, I didn't know you felt like that. Girl, you said that? Wow, that was deep, you know, because
that's wonderful.
It is, it truly is, and it's a form of building community.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah.
Well, would you read one of the poems you read today? I'm not sure the name, but it was Sparrow, mm-hmm. was what I would call it. Mm-hmm. But if I'm writing it, of course I'm not. But what is your name for the poem?
Sparrow's Eye.
Oh, it's beautiful. Could you read that for us?
Sure. And it is in the book Synchronicity, the yes. Oracle of Sun Medicine.
Beautiful.
And
you want to hold it up so people can see
oh,
it?
There it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just an incredible piece of work.
Well,
everything in that book.
Well, thank you. And I know you're so gracious, Kim, to allow the voice to be heard today, and what you have done with many in the community.
It's an honor.
Yeah.
It's an honor to sit and to just listen to poets.
So this piece actually took place, and that's why people will sometimes ask, how do you memorize something like that? Well, I merely put myself back in that day.
So, Tarita, what are you going to share with us? What poem are we going to have the pleasure of listening to?
I would like to do Sparrow's Eye.
Sounds wonderful.
And it took place at Jack London Square.
Excellent.
One sunny Sunday afternoon, ascending stairs at Jack London Square onto courtyard, partially barred, I sit at its pinnacle. By bathe this day of heat, my senses drink greedily. Vault of heaven, bright blue, swaddles family hues. Women, men, children, babies, eyes laugh, talk, pleasing, folk walking easy, winds blowing breezy. I lift my head toward skies when suddenly Sparrow graces my horizon, lands right in front of me, delivers another kind of peace. I feel silent, serene, when all at once its feathers flutter. My spine tingles. I shudder. Like mirrors, we look directly into one another and cock our heads to the same side. A moment of unity confides. We share and stare. Then sparrow flies and flies with a piece of my light, and sparrows in me.
Oh, that's lovely. Would you like to read anything else?
Holy Ghost, where heaven's bank on earth, shorelines mothers, where tides rise and break by sun, moon, and stars, and children come forth as birth ships, prophets of immortalities. I said children come forth as birthed ships, prophets of immortalities. Cells, trillions, singing throughout millenniums, holding tones, laws, genes, beams, waiting to astroblast into starlight, star-like generations, generations germinating genies and genies of life, light, blood, living waters, captured and held by wells of human cells and held prisoner of infinite talents, faiths, wisdoms, and prophets. Holy Ghost mystery spooks us all like a ghost, but our organs cling to that origin. Plays keys, fulfills wishes, breathed on banks, and prophets, the prophets of the Holy Ghost. The prophets of the Holy Ghost. Prophets of the Holy Ghost.
Amazing. It's always an honor to hear you read. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank our audience for sitting with us as we had the experience of hearing these wonderful poets at the Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival. And it's been magic. And I want to thank everyone because we all need a little magic in our lives.
Definitely.
Definitely. Take care. Thank you for watching Bay Area Art Beat.